Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Qala rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'd. Brothers and sisters, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Saya Muhammad Safwan ya. Okey, kita tadi mula dengan English ya. Kita campur-campur lah, kita rojak kita punya session kita insya-Allah pada hari ini, iaitu our quarterly program with Masjid Darul Makmur, our interactive live session insya-Allah. Insya-Allah, before we begin, let us all begin our event or our session here insya-Allah with the recitation of Surah Al-Fatihah. May Allah Subhanahu wa taala bless us insya-Allah and accept our ibadah. Ala hadhihi niyyah wa kulli niyatin salihah. Al-Fatihah. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Arrahmanirrahim. Maliki yaumiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Amin. Alhamdulillah. Okay, good morning to all of you. A warm morning. Okay, warm morning, tak gelap kat sini, alhamdulillah insya-Allah. InsyaAllah, before we start our program, allow me to share the concept of our program ni lah. Okay, alhamdulillah insya-Allah kita as of now this is the third session untuk kita punya quarterly program. So previously Masjid Darul Makmur have done two programs or two sessions about this quarterly program. The first one was about Ramadan with family, celebrate Ramadan. I think it's with Ustaz Yusri Yubihi. Then last few months kita jemput Ustazah Sultana untuk share her experience ataupun share regarding the pregnancy atau what to expect when expecting. So for today insya-Allah kita punya topik is it takes one to know one. Okay. So bukan one Safwan lah, bukan saya. Okay, one lain lah. Okay. So kita from the tajuk tu, from the topic itself, we can see yang kita ni nak cakap more of know your partner, kan? So kalau kita ni kalau kahwin semestinya berpartner lah, tak ada orang yang kahwin sendiri je. So kalau nak partner tu mesti kita nak kena tahu one another. So from any side ataupun any parts of our life lah, kita mentally, physically, financially and so on and so forth insya-Allah. So obviously marriage ni kita require sacrifice and commitment from both husband and wife. So it is important to understand the Islamic values of marriage and have good money planning in preparation for the lifetime journey together insya-Allah. So kita hopefully our sharing here today and our discussion, its sole purpose is actually to strive kita punya journey lah, is strive for us to become an ideal person lah for our partner, for Allah Subhanahu wa taala insya-Allah. InsyaAllah, as I mentioned, kita punya session ni is interactive live session. So for our viewers, if you have any questions ke atau any queries, you can just drop by kat comment in our Facebook comment. InsyaAllah nanti sorry. Sorry, tadi makan apa je pagi tadi ya. Okay, sorry. So kita insyaAllah in our Q&A session nanti, kita akan ask the questions yang being asked lah dekat our comment section insyaAllah. Alright. Okay. Without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker for today. That is Ustaz Sallim. Kita insyaAllah ramailah sudah kenal lah Ustaz Sallim. Ada kat mana-mana. Saya rasa kalau kita scroll kat Facebook ke kat mana, kat TikTok ke mana kan, sometimes mesti keluar Ustaz Sallim kat FYP orang kata lah. Okay. So Ustaz Sallim mesti akan terkeluar. So Ustaz Sallim, as we all know, is a naib qadi. Okay, and also he is currently the Imam Executive and Head of Community Engagement Department in Masjid Al-Istighfar. Okay, so I think for the past few years we have seen yang Ustaz Sallim ni active in helping couples in webinars, talks and ada counselling juga Ustaz Okay, so kalau kita tengok Instagram semalam-malam buat homework lah. Ustaz tulis the founder of Kahwin Buzz. Okay. So saya rasa pun before I got married last time pun saya pun tengok juga Ustaz Sallim punya video-video kan. Ustaz pun kita kalau every Sunday night lah Ustaz kalau pergi Clubhouse pun ada, Ustaz Maaz pun ada aktif juga dekat Asatizah SG. Ni semua I think our ijtihad lah, Asatizah punya ijtihad untuk kita share ilmu dengan the community lah, insyaAllah. So insyaAllah kita hari ini Ustaz will be sharing with us about knowing our partner after marriage. Either marriage fears ke, kalau kita sekarang seram kan, kalau sebelum nak kahwin ni mesti ada rasa-rasa seram dia, ada preparations in terms of mentally, physically and religiously, insyaAllah. And lastly to overcome misunderstandings lah. Okay, so I tak nak drag lagi banyak lagi, without further ado, insyaAllah kita jemput Ustaz Maaz Sallim untuk berikan pencerahannya. Falyatafaddal mashkura.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahu wa nasarahu wa walah. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'du. Terima kasih diucapkan kepada sahabat saya Ustaz Safwan sebagai intro yang panjang. InsyaAllah mudah-mudahan kita sama-sama lah berdoakan masing-masing diberikan kekuatan oleh Allah SWT. Okay, thank you Masjid Darul Makmur for inviting me and to allow me to share some of my experiences and insyaAllah the knowledge to you, especially for married couples or soon to be married couples. And the topic that have been given to me is about marriage. It takes one to know it takes one to know one. So in my sharings or in my presentation, I have few points to cover. I have 5 points actually, whether I can manage to share and have enough time, but insyaAllah. First point I would like to share with you regarding the marriage fears or the concerns. And we acknowledge that marriage is it's a new journey, new phase in life, so people can get anxiety and they have anxious and they want to know what sorts of preparation they need to have beforehand. And we are always like to read stories about marriage, about anything lah. So always there are negative stories about separation, divorces, and how can they avoid from becoming that victim lah. And secondly, my point is I would like to share with you what are the questions to be raised before marriage. Okay, as we know, maybe we want to have some kind of a checklist before we get into this commitment. And number 3, how to know if he or she is the one who is for me, or how to know he or she is the one who is the Mr. Right or the Mrs. Right. And number 4, preparations in terms of spiritually, mentally, physically. And lastly, if I have time, I will share with you how to overcome misunderstandings in the future or in a relationship. So insyaAllah. Alright. So I think you already can see your slides, the slides that I shared with you. Number 1 is always about intention. When we say about we always have this fear, anxiety getting into this new phase of life. Yeah, we have to acknowledge there are anxieties, there are risks, because we don't know what might happen, we don't know what future holds. And I can maybe I would like to share with you. Number 1 is important from Islamic perspective is how we put that into perspective. It is about our intention, it's about our goal, why we do that. The question is always why we want to get married. So Prophet ﷺ in a hadith narrated by Ibn Umar al-Khattab, innamal a'malu binniyat. This is a very general one. Indeed, the value of an action depends on the intention behind it. So I always advise and keep reminding myself, especially, and to the couples who are getting married, even in the marriage sermon during the solemnization, it's always about making right intention. So it doesn't necessarily one intention, you can make a lot of intention or sub-intentions. So number 1, of course, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we want to gain blessings from Allah because we want to make things right. Maybe we are in courtship for a period of time, certain period of time, then we want to move beyond that. We want to we want to further our relationship in a halal way. We want to halalize our relationship. So that is number one. Can so we must make that niat lillahi ta'ala for sake of Allah. Okay. Number two, it's equally important for us to make intention for the sake of following the sunnah, the tradition of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Nikah min sunnati." So marriage is part of my sunnah, is part of my tradition. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَعْمَلِ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. And whoever choose not to follow this route, my path or my sunnah, whereas he or she is able to do so, he is afford and he is able, he's not among my community lah, it's not my ummah. And that is number two. So number one, Allah. Number two, because of the Prophet, we want to gain blessings and barakah in our life, because we want to follow our Prophet. And number three, please add this intention too. I want to, it's for procreation. I want to contribute to the community, to the society in terms of giving, providing good quality ummah, good quality children. So if we produce a good quality children, then the children will pay back. The children will serve back, to give back to the community. And when the children give back to the community becomes strong. And when the community becomes strong, and it will giving back or contribute to the whole nation, to the development of our country, insyaAllah. So that is number three. So number four, you can add also with this marriage, insyaAllah, I will want to serve my family, to serve my wife, my husband, and I want to become more grateful and appreciative towards my own parents, because once you are married down, then you know how difficult it is to raise a child, how difficult it is to navigate life challenges, and how good boy are you last time during your parents. It's very difficult to raise you up. Now you know, so that you become something you want to feel appreciate towards your parents. So insyaAllah, this is the list that you can do lah, 4 niyats or 4 intentions before we contribute, before we commit lah into marriage. Okay, so the next slide. In Surah Ar-Rum, verse 21, Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala says, which means, and one of His signs is that He created for you spouse from among yourselves, that you may find comfort in them, and He has placed between you compassion and mercy. Surely in these are signs for people who reflect. So I always remind myself first to refer. This is the source of reference, is a principle. If we want to manage our marriage well, this is the reference, Rome 21. So you guys can memorize Rome 21, RMM 21, Rome 21. So what is this verse is all about? This is about the benefits that we can have in this world. Before you want to say, because marriage is part of the ibadah, you want to get paradise, this is the bridge to paradise. This is all true, absolutely correct. But on top of that, we have also worldly benefits from marriage. What is the worldly benefits? We will gain, or we will get repose or tranquility in life. So you may find comfort through our spouse, through their words of inspiration, words of hope, because we know we are human being. We are vulnerable, we have a lot of flaws. Sometimes we are stressed, we are down, so we need someone to speak to share our problems. So one of the best person in this world beside our parents is our spouse. It is hope that is the role and the duty the wife and the husband should play. So that is part of the niyat too, because we want to help other people. Allah SWT said, Rasulullah said, Wallahu fi auni al-abdi ma kana al-abdu fi auni akhihi. Whenever we are in the service, or we are in the assistance of our fellow brother, insyaAllah Allah will assist us too, and Allah will show us the way if we have any problems in life. Okay, and next slide. Before we want to get married, there are always questions. Yes, We have to acknowledge that. We need to ask questions. If you don't have any questions before marriage, don't get married. So it seems like we want to do investment, any form of investment. So you don't want to just fork up your money, 100k, without knowing what are you investing at, what company. So what is the ROI, what is the, the PM and so forth. So this is same concept. If you want to get married, you need to know your future spouse better. And some of the questions that you can ask, you may have 1001 questions by all means, but this is some of the core that I want to share with you. Number one, do we share the same vision for the future husband and for the future wife? So you need to talk, communicate. Do we share the same vision? What is marriage to you? What is why do you want to get married? So make sure you are on the same page, or at least you know why they want to get married with you. And the vision must be in this world and the akhirah. So maybe you can put like 5 to 10 years down the road, what do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? Maybe you want children. Indirectly, you already discuss about family planning. Sometimes my spouse, Ustaz, the pengantin yang nikah kan, after dah kahwin, baru one of the pasangan lah macam terkejut, oh rupanya dia ni tak nak anak dulu. Yang lagi satu, I nak anak, so why didn't you talk to me about this before? Kan macam dah jadi gaduh lah. Ini baru buat anak lah, belum financial, nanti Ustazah Jalidah lah share kan. So I think it's important too for you to discuss about this vision. Number two is, do I understand my roles? Okay, the roles that I already shared with you, Rome 21, for us to give, or for us to be the pillar strength, to be the pillar of, to be the source of comfort to our spouse. Asking this before making any commitment or promises. Make sure you know your role, and you are not only your role is not only as a husband or as a wife. If you have parents, your duty as a children too still have. So how are you going to juggle this? Macam mana you nak navigate this role between role as a child and role as a husband, role as a wife. Later on when you ada anak, then role as a father, as a mother. So this is, if you understand this role and your spouse also understand this role, InsyaAllah they can work better lah. And lastly, does he or she has a good character, akhlak. Akhlak is integral in any healthy relationships lah. So how to know that? You know how your spouse or your future husband or wife treat you. So how they treat their parents, when tengah stress, tengah ada masalah, how they deal, how they manage. Is it mature enough or not? Is it marah-marah? So you can make decisions about that. Okay, do we have time? Okay, and after that, how to know if he or she is the right one? Macam mana nak tahu yang dia ni memang betul orang yang kita nak kahwin? Okay, there are a lot, tapi for me the best one is I think the four things lah we need to know. Number one, firstly, make dua to Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. Ask Allah by performing solat, hajat or istikharah if needed. Not necessarily istikharah. If you already make up your mind, dah tak payah istikharah lah. You sembahyang hajat. Nanti istikharah jumpa mimpi Ustaz Safwan dah lain pula kan cerita. So you make your mind. If you really want to get married with someone yang you really put effort and commitment 100%, so what you need to do is performing solat hajat, not istikharah. Maybe istikharah for example, you want to make decision whether A or B, or whether you want to get married this year or next year kan. Okay, that's where istikharah comes into place lah. Maybe you can do that. Okay, number two, always know his or her background. Ni pun important lah Ustaz Safwan because I have case also, one couple dah lama lah kisahnya. When this wife lah, especially wife, dia dah get married, the husband tak solat. Bila the husband tak solat, dia try tanya, why tak solat? Bukan malas ke apa, memang I cannot solat kata. I uzur. Apa ya uzurnya? Because I cannot, I have some promises with the entity thing. Wah, rupanya dia main ni lah, dia main apa tu kata, black magic lah. So now the wife macam, wow, I don't know, I didn't know this. So dia dah terperangkap. So I think it's very important to know his or her background in terms of the religiosity, in terms of the character, or the family lah, family values, the principles. Is important for you to get prepared. How are you going to adapt to the changing situation or circumstances in the family. And number 3, does he or she fit your role, fit your core qualities? So you may have 1001 again qualities that you are looking for. Like for example, for lelaki, dia nak pandai masak, okay lah, you can have that. Maybe that is tak penting sangat lah kan. Tapi the core ones is akhlak, it's about knowledge. How far he know about marriage, how deep he know about fardu ain, about solat. Okay. And lastly, consult relevant people. Sorry, typo, people. Salah. Consult relevant people, your parents, your partners, friends and pious people. So consult our parents, consult the friends, your friends. So this will get a lot of insights before you commit lah. Okay, in terms of preparation, next slides. There are 3 aspects. Number 1 is mentally. In terms of mental preparation, that is one of the most asked questions lah. Maybe you start, how to prepare? What form of preparation that I need to prepare? Okay, number 1, mental preparation. I would like to just, as a summary, number 1, serving not entitlement. So our mentality is like this. We need to have a serving mentality, not entitlement. Meaning, I want to get married, serve my family, serve my wife. I want to make him happy. And not that I want, what can I get from this marriage? Okay. Number 2, expect the unexpected and ready to adapt changes. Okay, kita tahulah dunia berubah kan, pandemic, endemic, sampai bila pun end of times nanti nanti end of times baru dia akan ubah juga. So same goes to husband and wife relationship, whether external or internal. Okay, whether during first 5 years in marriage lain, then after that the period pregnancy lain, the period after pregnancy dah lain, postpartum period lagi ada, a lot of things lah happen and changes. So we need to keep updated, motivated and always adaptive lah to changes. Number 2, in terms of spirituality, kita kena banyak solat juga, biasa kena solat berjemaah dengan family kita, then kita minta doa. Number 2 is selawat and zikir, doa a lot lah for to gain this spiritual strength. And number 3, physically, in terms of physically, you eat healthy and stay fit lah. Cakap je lebih tapi sendiri pun tak buat. Physically you need to be very strong because you need to attend to the needs of your wife, your husband. So I think dia main peranan lah in terms of our physical. So dia ada banyak sangat kerja kan, jadi kita pun kena sentiasa keep healthy lah. Okay, and lastly, insyaAllah I have time, overcoming misunderstandings. Okay, we know that ada tendency lah untuk misunderstanding between husband and wife. Not just husband and wife, parents dengan children pun ada misunderstandings. So how to overcome that? So more communication to avoid misunderstandings. Number 1, communicate to connect, not communicate to reply, not to respond. Okay, and connect emotionally, not just physically. Some husband and wife, they sit together in the dining table, but they're talking, but they're not connecting. They just talk about their daily work, their challenges, tapi tak communicate emotionally. Number 2 is realistic expectations. Know that your partner is a human being with flaws and imperfections. Your role is to help and support. Must be realistic lah. Sometimes terlalu over realistic. Itu yang berlaku lah, misunderstandings. They don't communicate and they don't know what the spouse expect from the partner. So that's why, again, go back to the first part lah, communicate. And number 3 is more self-reflect. So when conflicts or misunderstandings happen, sometimes we try to find faults from others. That is wrong lah. Actually, it is more about doing self-reflection. You try to dig what went wrong. First myself. Okay, what went wrong? Maybe the way I approach that is not something yang dia tak suka, something yang dia suka. So when the arguments, so rather than blaming or finding faults, that is the period whereby you can do muhasabah a lot lah. So you need to change our approach in order to change your partner. Ini selalu soalan, macam mana Ustaz, partner saya tak semayang, partner saya masih isap rokok kan, tak stop, partner saya selfish, self-centered. So if we cannot change people lah. We cannot change people. What you can do is you try to change your approach. When you change your approach, insyaAllah that person will see your change, your kindness, and they will slowly, gradually try to change. Lastly, solat together, solat berjamaah is indeed a powerful tool to safeguard your relationship from negative elements and for blessings from Allah. Ni dah last part insyaAllah. So we need to have this as a culture, as a husband and wife. Kita kena always solat berjamaah, and to safeguard from any evil things happen to us, any negative elements, and insyaAllah may everything goes well lah. This is not perfect, tapi this is I think important lah, at least for things to overcome misunderstanding. InsyaAllah saya pass to moderator Ustaz Safwan balik.
Okay, Alhamdulillah, Masya Allah. Okay, thank you so much Ustaz Maaz for such a beneficial and eye-opening sharing lah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, I think if saya ni nak kasih rumusan pun, I think is never gonna finish lah. Okay, so I think the most important part of knowing each other before marriage ni, basically what I have heard lah tadi kan. So it's more of kita nak kena ambil tahu about our partner first lah. I think it's a good exercise yang maybe in our Malay community ni lah. Kita nak kahwin ni, sometimes kita will ada kecoh-kecoh kan. Kalau tunang pun kadang kecoh-kecoh. So maybe unintentionally kita pun kenal the partner yang your family will be marrying, and also their partner pun akan tahu the family yang kita akan get involved with. So from there maybe kita, if we ever heard of history of about this person ke, of this individual, kita can not cancel terus. Kita can think about it first. Kita masih lagi boleh fikir punya time lah. So unless macam tadi Ustaz cakap lah kan, kalau dah terjadi, kalau once we are married, kita dah kena commit dah. So kita tak boleh dah married, dah nampak salah, then kita nak cabut. I think it's dah lambat lah by that time. By that time kita dah kena next step lah insyaAllah. Okay, and last part maybe yang self-reflection lah. So I think tu paling I think every single person dah will have went through this, atau will go through this. Okay, impossible kalau kita will always be, kita dengan our partner kita semua sama je. Impossible lah I think. Okay, so kalau tu sama je maknanya tak payah kahwin kot, hidup sendiri lagi best kan. Kalau apa yang dia nak semua dapat, apa dia tak nak pun tak nak juga. Okay, so I think one of the things lah insyaAllah kita can benefit from insyaAllah. Okay, okay, Alhamdulillah kita have heard I think quite a lot from Ustaz Maaz Sallim insyaAllah. So for the next part insyaAllah, let me introduce Ustazah Jalidah Hidayati insyaAllah. Okay, Ustazah Jalidah Hidayati has a Bachelor of Islamic Finance and Business Management, and she is also an IBF certified Institute of Banking and Finance Singapore insyaAllah. Okay, so Ustazah's topic for today mainly touches on financial plannings lah. So I think it's, yang tadi Ustaz Maaz tu mention is one part, tapi kita pun another part is financial. Kita nak kena be realistic lah. Okay, so orang Melayu kata takkan nak hidup dengan cinta je kan. Kita bukannya duit tu grow dengan kat rumput-rumput ke apa kan. So kita kena fikir dengan finance juga. So the common financial issues yang kita face by couples, the family plannings and our needs and our wants insyaAllah. InsyaAllah, without further ado, Ustazah Jalidah.
Okay, terima kasih Ustaz for the introduction. InsyaAllah for today I'll be discussing about how individuals can handle their money and how we can actually overcome the differences as a couple. Alright, so because just a brief review. Growing up, we learn about the importance of saving, about how saving is better than spending, about how we have to prioritize our needs and our wants. Right? So generally, everyone knows what they have to do. Tapi the challenge is whether the person is able to do it or not. Right? So next slide. So this is when, let me just share a survey that was conducted in 2016 among engaged married couple and also parents. That was published in the new paper. It is stated that actually 41% of Singaporeans surveyed that money is the main cause of their issues generally. Alright, next slide. And if we go deeper into the issue, according to the survey conducted in 2017, 21% among the divorcees actually state that money was the cause of their divorce. Alright, so when you look at this, right, you might be thinking like, what exactly are the money problems they face? So this is where some of the factors that can actually lead to the money problems are overspending, credit card debt, bad credit, medical debt, student loan debt and so on. So macam tadi Ustaz cakap, like we wouldn't know someone until we get married. You know, when we go into bila nak apply home loan, baru dapat tahu actually our partner ada bad credit, you know, that can affect the loan application. Atau, you know, we found out that apparently our partner have a lot of credit card debt that they need to clear actually, but they just, you know, never mention about it beforehand. So these are the things that can actually lead to the money problem after marriage lah, that we have to take note of. Next slide. So what can cause someone to actually fall into these problems are usually the lack of control over their money. Okay, so macam it can be due to an unexpected medical bill. Okay, na'udzubillah min zalik, like if the person, a misfortune were to happen and they have these big medical bills that they have to pay, and that can actually wipe out their entire savings that they have worked so hard to save in the first place. Alright, so these are unexpected things lah. Kalau macam expected things, it can be due to our habits, our spending habits, and this will bring me to the next one, which is credit card. Okay, because actually, you know, orang cakap like credit card is bad and things like that. There might be some good in it, especially if you can get one that has no interest, 0% of interest, because they actually use it to purchase big ticket items, macam nak beli furniture, nak beli electronical appliances and things like that, because they don't have that lump sum of money in hand. So that is why they feel like the ease of a monthly installment is better for them and things like that. Alright, but however, this kind of thing we have to be careful, because we might get the habit of you know, beli dulu bayar kemudian, and if you don't practice constraint or restraint, it can actually snowball and turn into an amount, a very very big amount that we cannot control. One of my friend who actually shared with me, the same niat, you know, her niat was by, you know, to actually have a credit card to help with the big purchases and things like that. However, she got into the habit of signing up for credit card to a point that she actually have like around 6 credit cards. 2 of them already reached maximum limit. The other 2 is like the other cards are macam 7,000, 5,000. So it became to a point that she actually just avoid looking at it, because bila tengok seram, you know, like the number is a very big number. Yeah, so these are the things that we need to practice precaution lah when handling this kind of budgeting and planning. Okay, so that we don't have to suffer in the future, insyaAllah. Alright, so because of that big purchases also, that will lead to my next point, which is about the overestimating their budget. By the way, next slide is the circle one, right? Okay, yeah. So the next one is overestimating their budget. Okay, so this can be as simple as macam for example, they put aside $200 for their groceries, monthly groceries, alright, but they didn't keep track. So actually, what they are spending on the groceries is maybe 500 per month. You know, so when they're doing their calculation, you know, nampak nombor semua lawa, like, oh, okay lah, I have a lot of money to save and things like that. But then at the end of every month, they'll be wondering, where did it go? I thought I'm supposed to have like $300, but where did the money go? So this kind of thing is something that you can overcome it by practicing to track down your expenses, so you will actually know where the money goes. So kalau kita over budget, which is something very normal, I mean, we try not to normalize it, but you know, it happens. What we can do is actually track down kalau memang ada certain areas that we over budget, I mean it exceed our budget, that's when you will know when to cut down and how much you can cut down. Okay, alright. Okay, so the next one is some couples actually have different financial priorities. Alright, because you know for one person macam dia pada orang macam okay, example paying bill on time. Okay, some macam nak cakap certain individual feel that we don't need to pay the bills in full. Okay, I mean there are some people that I've met as well who actually shared with me that they normally don't pay their bills in full. What they do is they'll pay half or maybe 70 or 80% of it, and then the balance amount bring it to the next month. Alright, they have their own justification and things like that. So what I want to highlight here is when your partner have different financial priorities, this can lead to some conflict. Alright, so because like one partner maybe will pay their bills on time in full, but then the other partner have this kind of habit, right? So this kind of thing is like you might think like tak bagus apa, so like have to like pay in full so that this won't lead to macam excess amount in the future and things like that. Yeah, but because of this kind of different habits, it will lead me to my next question, my next point, which is opposing attitudes towards money. Alright, we need to understand like kenapa our partner have that kind of habit. Mungkin at certain point of time in their life they experience financial difficulties. So because of that, diorang memang tak boleh bayar full, you know, and then they pay like I said lah 70%, 80% because they feel like the extra money that they have like saving from not paying full, they can use it to, you know, buy groceries or maybe to bayar tuition fees and things like that. Yeah, alright. So this is where I wanted to highlight that there is no right or wrong. It's just that if you can establish understanding and macam have an honest conversation, you can find out ways to actually overcome these kind of problems. Alright, next slide. Okay, so this will bring me towards the money personalities, the different money personalities out there. Even though I stated 4, but actually there's so many different money personalities. So because of this, right, if we were to understand why our partner handle money in a certain way, this will provide a clearer view and idea on how we can overcome the problem as a couple, as a family. Alright, and because for example, if we know our partner, you know, like for example, I was mentioning about the bill, right? We understand that our partner have that kind of attitude because of that difficulty. We will have a level of tolerance and understanding towards the habit. Yeah, and macam like what Ustaz mentioned is like we have supposed to like help and support each other through those things. So macam in the end, InsyaAllah, we can come up with a proper solution to the problem. Okay. Alright, so next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned, a lot of circumstances can influence someone's habit towards money. It can be external factor, like I mentioned, maybe the person kena financial difficulty, that's why they have certain traits. Okay, like it can be environment of people atau macam event or trauma. So when I say circle of people, maybe that person surround themselves with people yang maybe selalu keluar makan. Okay lah, selalu kita keluar makan. So like maybe like keluar makan tempat-tempat mahal. Okay, for example. So you feel the pressure of wanting to like to spend that much in order to fit in or to enjoy your time with your friends and things like that. So this kind of thing can actually influence their money habits. Alright, so it can also be an internal factor. That means macam a personal goal. Maybe you have a goal of maybe you want to save up 50k before 30 years old, something like that. So because of that, you really skimp on every single thing. So macam you really save up, makan pun maybe makan kat rumah je, tak keluar sangat, kalau nak travel somewhere maybe jalan kaki ke, naik bicycle and things like that. So as you can see, these kind of factors can the person can internalize and actually translate lah to their money habits. Okay, and also it can be about their mindset and a complex that they might have. Mostly it's psychological. So that's why if you can really go deeper into it and understand why, InsyaAllah it will be easier to overcome the problem. Okay, next slide. Now, you might be wondering why is there a need to highlight this? Because ni pasal couple apa, I should be talking about like the finances of a married couple and things like that. Okay, so the reason why I highlight this before I go into the other details is because we need to understand that when we get married, we do not automatically lose our identity and become one person. Because this is something, next slide. Because this is something that people fail to acknowledge and understand sometimes. Because you know that whole magical moment, like okay, kahwin, then after that wedding, okay, we're gonna create a family together, semua jadi, you know, one whole family unit and things like that. So we sometimes abandon the thought that, oh, our partner is someone different, kan, and they are still individuals with their own characteristic, their own habits, and kan, both of you guys already agreed that you want to be in this lifelong partnership together, and together to build a family. Yeah, so this is the lack of understanding on this part that can actually lead to a lot of conflicts. Alright, so in regards to the money personalities, we are on this slide, right? Okay, so when I was talking about the money personalities, right, one is not superior than the other. Okay, so for example, our partner is saver personality, and maybe for us we are more of a giving personality. Alright, so one is not superior than the other. Alright, it is just macam a tool for us to understand our partner punya money habits. That's it. Alright, so we cannot say things like macam, you know, oh, okay, I'm a saver, it's better than giving, then duit tak ada, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's not because of that. Okay, however, despite the differences in our money personalities, I want to stress on the fact that even though our money personalities can be different, it can never justify someone not fulfilling their financial responsibilities. Okay, unless they got into a situation where, you know, they really try their best, but circumstances is such that they are unable to fulfill it as properly as they should. For example, kalau the husband, normally sekarang in today's context, the wife and the husband both work together. So maybe like the husband suddenly kena retrench. Okay, so if that were to happen, that is where maybe, you know, he's not able to do his part of fulfilling the responsibility as a husband, as a father. So that is where maybe ada kekurangan sikit and things like that. However, insyaAllah, if he do his best to find another job, he knows that he have a responsibility to feed his family, I'm sure insyaAllah one way or another he'll find a way to fulfill the responsibility. Alright, so that is why, like Ustaz mentioned, even before wedding or before the marriage itself, you should have a honest conversation with one another. Find out, other than finding out like how many kids you want or what kind of house you want to buy and things like that, you will have to sit down and talk about whether after marriage you want your wife to still work or not. Are they able to survive in one paycheck if you don't want your wife to work, or vice versa. Alright, because one of the main thing about a family is they have to share a common goal. If they don't share a common goal, then that is where problems will rise. Okay, because husband and wife nak kena macam satu kepala in terms of managing a family. Because for example, kalau in terms of taking care of children, if both have different parenting styles, it might clash. Right, so that is where they have to find ways to complement one another in their ways of handling things. Okay, and when I say common goals, right, like I mentioned, dia tak semestinya macam because we have this family goal, kita dah tak boleh ada our own goals and things like that. No, technically you can still retain your personal goal while having your common, you know, family goal, and sometimes it can even be correlated. Okay, alright. So next slide. So according to the next slide is what I mentioned just now. There are 3 things that you can actually take note lah, that you can do. The first one is maybe you can schedule like a monthly date night, you know, or okay lah, maybe date night tak nak berbual pasal duit lah maybe lah, like, you know, choose a time or maybe satu kali in 2 months and things like that. Sit down and know that you're going to review your budgets, review your finances, tengok mana nak cut down, whether whatever ways that you have chosen dapat reach our goal ke tak. Kalau tak dapat reach, then maybe somewhere you might have to cut down and things like that lah. The main thing is working as a team. Alright, bukan macam tuduh one another like, okay, because you buy this kind of thing, that's why we don't have enough money, and so on and so forth. Alright, so the second one, like I mentioned, having a honest conversation and reaching to a mutual agreement between one another. So jadi tak clash. And it is okay to disagree. Okay, but when you disagree with your partner, always disagree with respect. Okay, because when you and your partner may have different ways, but you take the effort to actually sit down, listen to them, to understand them, and weigh out the macam pros and cons. Okay, kalau I buat macam gini, nanti these are the good and bad. Kalau you buat macam gini, these are the good and bad. So when you do that, right, your partner will feel validated. Okay, and feel like their opinions is valued. Alright. Okay, next slide. Okay, so for this part, I'll be explaining more to macam what is the difference between having joint accounts or individual accounts and things like that. For this kind of topic, right, it actually differs. There's no one solution fit all kind of thing. So this is something that you have, like I said lah, everything actually boils down to communication. Sit down with your partner, tengok which ways actually suit you guys best. Alright, next slide. So the first one is having joint accounts. Okay, this one is very straightforward. Straightforward in a way that the wife's this one is taking into context that the wife and the husband is working. Alright. So the wife income and the husband income, kira-kira diorang combine into one joint account. That means it's gonna be a shared income. Alright, so whether someone is earning more than the other and things like that, they don't highlight any of those things. They just think that, okay, monthly income is this much, and how much we're gonna spend. So they're gonna spend from that joint account as well, and how much they're gonna save from that joint account juga. Okay? Okay, so far okay at the time? Okay. Alright, so next slide. So these are the pros and cons lah. So like I mentioned, it's very simple because you're combining everything at once. And there's no power control. Like I mentioned, kalau satu earning more than the other, you're still spending the amount together. So there's no such thing as macam, oh, I earn more, so I have the more authority to decide what we have to buy and things like that. Okay, however, the downside of this particular strategy is that because you're combining everything, so nanti kalau your own personal expenses is going to be scrutinized. Okay, hopefully, of course, you wouldn't have anything to hide anyway. But sometimes exposing your financial activities, right, may lead you to feel macam deprived of that personal financial privacy atau independence. Because I think all of us can relate in a sense that bila kita dah kerja, the feeling of actually spending your own money, from your, the hard work that you have done is different. Okay. Yeah, and of course the next one is because you and your partner might have mismatched money personalities, one might spend more than the other, and if you guys don't communicate regularly, it can build up resentment inside. Okay. Yeah. Okay, next slide. Okay, this one is quite individualistic sikit, in a sense that they have individual accounts. So what they actually what they actually do is divide the financial responsibilities. So for example, they know they have to pay for the, for example, kalau dah ada anak, like they have to pay for kids punya tuition fees, they have to pay for the groceries, maybe rumah nak kena add some cash, house bills and things like that. So they write all of these things down and then they segregate. So for example, the husband bayar bill rumah, and maybe the husband take care of the house bill, the house maintenance ke, or groceries, and then maybe the wife take over paying for the children punya tuition fees and things like that. Okay, so as you can see from the slide, it's quite straightforward lah, in a sense that both have their own income, they spend accordingly. It's just that other than spending on their personal, they are also spending on the joint expenses as well. Okay, next slide. So the good thing about this is you are able to maintain your privacy and financial independence, okay, because you are handling your own money. And you have established macam mutual agreement on siapa bayar apa, you know, and things like that. Okay, however, the downside of it is it might lead to lack of support. Okay, why I say lack of support? Because kita dah segregate accordingly, right? Kalau tak ada communication properly and things like that, dia macam sendiri bayar, sendiri kan? Okay, sendiri bayar, that kind of stuff. So you don't really know for sure like, my partner gaji dia hari ni cukup tak dia untuk bayar dia punya like personal expenses and things like that. So that's why it can evoke a sense of individualistic. And then the second one is underestimating the expenses. So for example, I mentioned maybe the wife handle tuition fees, right? So maybe tuition fees je that particular month, maybe tengah nak PSLE or something, so took extra lesson. So instead of maybe 300 per month, dia naik jadi like 400 or 500 per month. So when this kind of thing happen, the wife might have difficulty paying for it with the gaji that she have. So what will happen is, if you guys don't communicate, that is where, macam like I said lah, okay lah, I have to settle this, so you settle your own expenses, this kind of thing. But of course, it can be overcome if you were to tell the person that, this month I'm a bit tight. Can you help me? Can you like help to cover these expenses and things like that? Okay. Alright. So last but not least, next slide is joint accounts juga, tapi it is a bit different. It's different in a sense that husband and wife handle their own expenses and saving, tapi they agreed on an amount to put inside the joint account. Okay, so for example, they make an agreement of putting $500 per month inside the account. So the husband 500, the wife 500. So this account is just growing, and whatever common expenses they have to give, that is where orang can separatekan lagi into joint savings and joint expenses. Next slide. Alright, so so far for this kind of strategy, right, dia macam dapat combine best of both world, because dapat maintain privacy, but at the same time establish macam a form of partnership between one another, because dua-dua nak kena have this shared responsibility to contribute to the joint account. Alright, and it also encourage communication, because bila kita nak spend money from the joint account, right, you will ask your husband, or your husband will ask you, is it okay if we use this money to pay for this and that and this and that, because the transparency is there. It's easier to have an honest conversation about it. Okay. Alright. Next slide. The cons is a bit more tedious, because you have to handle your own finances, but then at the same time you have to make sure that the finances, the joint finances, is also well taken care of. Alright. And then, like I mentioned, if they agreed on an amount macam $500 per person, if one is earning less than the other, it might not be that fair. Alright, so that is where a percentage, it can be overcome if they were to put a percentage of it. Or like I mentioned, actually one of my friends shared her experience whereby even though she is earning less than the husband, but because in a partnership, this is something like your amanah, and then you have to take care of your spouses and your children. So kadang-kadang kita tak mengira, in that sense that tak kisahlah even though I'm earning more, we can use the money together. So if you can have that kind of mentality, that kind of sense of responsibility towards one another, InsyaAllah, things will go more smoothly. Alright. Okay. So next slide. So technically, those are the different accounts you can actually look into when you want to macam join your finances with your partner. However, like I mentioned, you have to go through the trial and error. One that works for a couple, that it might not work for the other couple. So try it out. Macam monitor it maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and then see where you can improve on it. Okay. Right. So for the next topic is about financial planning. this one of course is more on the money side lah, okay? So this is about preparing for our little ones. So we know that we as parents, we are responsible for our children punya well-being. So because they are an amanah that Allah have entrusted us to nourish, to nurture, so that insyaAllah one day in the future they will become leaders on earth. So therefore kita nak kena make sure that we are not only providing them financially, of course, but also emotionally and mentally. Alright? And the word financial planning, right, that is stated here, it means that a couple is planning for a child. Alright? So when you're planning for a child, it does not only mean that you have to save up a certain amount, atau kalau dah ada rumah baru nak ada anak, you know, things like that. Because it is not within our control sometimes. It means that you have to prepare yourself mentally, emotionally, that you are going to have this additional amanah in your life. And you know, it will be another priority for you from now onwards. So after you dah strengthen your intention, your niat, that you're gonna take on this responsibility, that is when we can look into how much savings is actually needed to cover prenatal, postnatal expenses, and so on. Okay, next slide. Okay, so like I mentioned, actually I shared some hadith and Quranic verse regarding how children is our amanah lah, technically. Alright, next slide. Okay, so of course this varies because it depends on, of course, the hospital you go to, the, you know, gynecologist punya packages and things like that. But roughly, things that you need to look out for, especially for prenatal expenses, for mummies is actually for the doctor visits, the gynecologist consultations, the delivery charges, you know, making sure that her health is okay financially and things like that. And of course for the babies, because you are waiting for the arrival of your newborn, of course you're going to buy the baby cot, diapers, baby clothes, baby punya baju and things like that. Yeah. Okay, so these are the the rough draft of expenses you need to look out for. Of course, like kalau nak beli, like, you know, bottles, all these things are included lah. Maybe nak beli bottle punya sterilizer ke, atau, you know, sekarang they have this like a diaper changing station, you know, all this kind of stuff. This, if you are someone, if you're someone that wants those kind of stuff, of course you have to plan accordingly so that you can buy those things beforehand. Okay, for postnatal punya expenses, many might focus more on the baby itself, like I mentioned about the diapers, formulas, maybe dia perlukan pacifier, you know, things like that, the bendong and things like that. But we cannot forget about the mother punya postnatal care as well. Okay, because that's where they have to you know, jaga dorang punya makanan. Because sekarang dah ada very easy, alhamdulillah. I saw one of my cousin who just gave birth. They actually ordered the confinement punya meals and things like that. And those things, of course, you have to pay for it. So if you don't set aside budgets and proper planning for those things, you might overlook, and it will affect your planning as a whole. Okay. Alright. So next slide. So these are the macam tips lah that you can look out for. Alright. Because kalau kita beli everything at one go, of course it will be like a very large amount of money being spent, right? So one of the things that you can look out for are deals throughout the whole pregnancy, because the pregnancy will take like 9 months, you know. So throughout the whole of the pregnancy period, look out for deals during the period of time, and also stagger the things that you need to buy. So for example, you want to buy the baby cot, so you know how much you want to buy, which brand you want to buy. So you write down the number, divide accordingly. Okay, maybe every month I'm going to put $50 for that baby cot or something like that. Atau macam maybe bulan ni beli baby cot, bulan depan beli I don't know, the bottle sterilizer and things like that. So it's not really something that you have to buy everything all at once, because that is where susah lah, okay, to plan like that. Alright, so the third one is actually about what is best for our children. So one of the things that of course we know that our parents wants the best for us. Okay, so but the thing is, like, best doesn't necessarily mean expensive. Okay, things that sometimes parents do take note of is like macam the practicality of the item or the efficiency of that item, to measure, you know, whether a product is worth buying or not. Let me share a story about a pram that my cousin bought actually. She bought this very beautiful pram, macam, you know, that vintage English pram, like it's very big, nampak lawa lah, macam very Instagrammable punya pram. So even though I was not married at the point of time, and I mean, of course I don't know, married so no child, but I asked her like where she buy it and how much is it, and it was quite expensive. But then again, she told me that she wouldn't really encourage me to buy that pram because, and she was actually planning to sell off that pram after maybe 3-4 months, because it was very heavy to carry. It was not practical. Nak naik public transport pun susah because tak boleh fold the pram. Yeah, because it's like a bassinet, macam very, very, very nice lah. So, yeah. So, so that's why she, you know, decided to sell it off to buy a more practical, more high mobility punya pram to move around with her kids. So the highlight of me sharing this story, not to say that buying that pram was a bad idea. If you can afford to buy that pram, you like the aesthetic, you know, untuk ambil gambar, like if you feel that is something that you are okay to splurge on, by all means you can go ahead. Alright, but of course you have to take into account lah of the downside of having that kind of pram, so that if you know that you are someone who tak kisah sangat pasal this kind of thing, you prefer a practical option, macam cheaper option, then go ahead. Both is not wrong. The only thing that is wrong is if you compromise your financial responsibilities, macam maybe because of nak beli pram tu, babynya formula kena beli yang murah-murah or something like that, you know, or yeah, like you have to compromise something else to buy those things, then it will not be advisable. Okay, alright. Okay, next slide. Okay, so actually this is coming to the end of my sharing session. I would like to share a verse from Surah At-Taghabun. Your wealth and your children are only trial, whereas God with Him is a great reward, paradise. This is from verse 15. This is to say that, you know, do your planning, financial planning, whether before you have a kid or to buy a house, renovation, things like that. Do your own planning. If things didn't go as planned, review it, find ways to improve from there, because only you know your situation. You know where your money goes and you know what you need to do to improve on it. These are all tests. InsyaAllah, we can all strive together in this planning with the right intention. Okay, last slide. So ini macam the summary of the whole conversation. Ultimately, like I mentioned, go through the trial and error until you figure out what works best for you and your partner. Always remember that communication, understanding one another, and having a sense of compassion towards your partner is the key to achieving a harmonious punya partnership lah. Whether it's about financial ke atau it's about your family values as a whole. Okay, right. That's all from me. InsyaAllah. Thank you, Ustaz.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much, Ustazah Jalidah, for your sharing. InsyaAllah. I think tadi just now when Ustazah Jalidah mentioned about kita need to be wary of our expenses kan, lagi-lagi bila makan so saya rasa guilty lah sebab tengah berbual tu I receive a notification from Foodpanda macam dia suruh saya order. Cuba ada. Okay, Alhamdulillah. Okay, thank you very much Ustazah Jalidah for the wonderful insight lah. Alhamdulillah. I think those are the things yang kita need to be aware of lah. I think sure it's more technical kita sometimes orang ingat kahwin tu macam happy kan. So ni saya kena technical sangat ni. So tapi sebab technical tu lah I think kita punya marriage is more meaningful lah. Kalau tak technical, kita hidup freely, kita hidup macam apa orang kata kais pagi makan pagi, kita macam okey lah. Nanti petang kita tengok nanti makan apa. I think it's quite difficult lah sebab kita fikirkan apa nak makan petang, nanti kita tak dapat fikir lagi future lagi jauh lagi. So in order to think more further, kita kena assume yang apa-apa yang akan datang ni insya-Allah dah settle lah. Tapi overall ultimately it's just kita plan aja. Jadi ke tak jadi itu belakang cerita lah, tapi it's important yang kita have to try ourselves insya-Allah. Okay, insya-Allah kita we hope everyone atau every single one of us benefit from the sharing session insyaAllah. Okay, now we are back to our Q&A session. So before that, I would like to remind our viewers, you can, if you have any questions you want to ask our speakers, Ustaz Maaz, Ustaz Jalidah, please drop by your comment dekat our Facebook comment tu insyaAllah. And also kita urge for our viewers to give your feedback lah. Okay, so I think on my right sekarang ni kita ada QR code, you can just scan, you can give your feedback atau you have maybe any suggestion for future punya program ke kan. Kita concentrate more about family. So any topics yang interesting ke atau ada yang any feedback about this session, insyaAllah you can give your feedback here lah. Also we will give you the link dekat our comment section lah insyaAllah. Okay, so for our Q&A session insyaAllah kita have the first question we can ask Ustaz Maaz lah insyaAllah. Alright, I have here is what to do when I happen to know that my spouse is self-centered. So I think self-centered ni is subjective sikit sebab self-centered maybe sebelum kahwin tu nampak macam dia apa-apa yang partner dia nak, dia layankan. Tapi bila dah kahwin tu, tiba macam nak beli rumah ke, nak beli apa semua, dia more of untuk dia je, dekat family dia ke apa tu semua kan. So macam mana kita, apa kita boleh buat our partner ni, can we overcome from this problem lah insyaAllah.
Okay, thank you Ustaz. I think it's very good question you ask and very relevant one. And it can relate lah to a lot of us, self-centered. I agree Ustaz. Safar kata dia subjektif, because kalau kita tak self-centered, kita tak boleh juga, kita kena self-centered juga, kita kena self-care, self-love kan. We cannot putting others too much before us. Okay, tapi yang orang kata tu ukur tara always to be flexible and balance lah. It's how we find balance. Ni dia dah kahwin tadi. Sudah kahwin baru ada perasan yang the husband self-centered. Okay, I think you number one always cliche lah, communicate. Ustaz, communicate. How to communicate? This is another technical lah, like Ustaz Safar, this technical. Not many people know how to communicate. Sometimes communication ni depends on couple punya own arrangement ataupun their own culture. So find your way of communicating. What's the best way to communicate to your husband, to your wife, in this case your husband lah. And you and your spouse know better when and how is the best approach in terms of communication. Sometimes orang lelaki tak suka di approach when we do mistake ataupun when in a conflict, kita tak suka terus di interrogate. So we need to have space, macam okay dia merajuk dulu kan, ada sometimes kena silent treatment. So it depends lah, 1 week ke lama kan. It depends lah, 1 day ke 2 days, nights, they need to relieve themselves before they can really come to you back and then open up, communicate about the issue. So it really depends lah. Some individual they like to communicate in advance lah, maknanya bila ada konflik terus, okay, let's speed it out sekarang juga. Tapi tengok lah how is your culture macam mana Ustaz. Okay, then there is communicate lah, meaning you need to, tak boleh just you're frust and then you try asking someone else, third party, try to solve your problem. Okay, maybe that is one way lah. Okay, there's another way is always to approach your husband and in the right time, in a respectful manner, try to communicate your feeling lah. This is how I feel lah. Gini. Okay, whether you want to direct or indirectly, it is up to your own culture lah. Up to your own culture. You know better. You know your spouse better. Dia ni suka jenis lapik-lapik, bunga-bunga ataupun memang direct. Cakap direct je lah kan. Sometimes ada orang tak suka direct, ada orang suka direct. So it's how you communicate lah. Okay, number one, communicate your feelings. Whether that husband tahu tak yang what you think yang dia tu self-centered. Sometimes people just don't know. They don't realise their mistake lah. Oh, am I being too self-centered? If I'm being too self-centered, then I'm sorry. Maybe they're willing to admit their mistake. In self-centered, maybe dia terlalu besarkan parents dia je, family dia je kan. Tak pay attention to the wife's punya family. So I think number one itulah communicate. And number two, if you really want, this is tadi saya dah share lah, if you really want other people to change, that let's start from yourself. You try not to become self-centered first. Dia self-centered, but you don't become that person lah. Don't try to become that one. So you just selflessly help, treat your husband kindly. You help a lot lah. I mean, you tolong. Bila dah buat macam tu, maybe dia akan realise lah yang whatever dia buat ni actually semua dia punya interest je. So where is dia punya wife's interest? So insyaAllah slowly and gradually the husband may realise one day, ni dah do a lot for me. How about her interest? Am I being good enough for her? Hopefully lah dia akan open. Okay, but you cannot just do that lah. You need to communicate also. Sometimes you need to have honest conversation, to share your feelings lah. InsyaAllah, may Allah ease your affairs. On to you.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Syukran jazilan Ustaz Maaz for your answer. InsyaAllah kita try to samalah macam cakap tadi, kita try to communicate lebih lah. Okay, so I think tu je the only thing. Kalau tak communicate, terus sama patah balik, buat apa kahwin lah kan. Lebih duduk dalam bilik seorang-seorang je, tak apa-apa kan. So if you communicate, insyaAllah slowly lah but surely kita akan find maybe a fine line between you and your partner lah, insyaAllah. Okay, back to Ustazah Jalidah, insyaAllah. Okay, I have a question here that says how to control or help my spouse who is a spendthrift. So I think ni maybe some people I've went through this kan. So maybe their partner tu before marriage pun sendiri dia dah memang spendthrift sendiri lah. Okay, maybe dia suka, maybe ada certain orang suka kasut-kasut kan. So diorang beli kasut banyak. Then after marriage impossible lah dia nak cut off terus kan. So macam mana maybe dia nak stop, bukan nak stop lah, kita nak how to control kita punya partner lah, insyaAllah. Fadal.
Okay, so the question is how to control or help my spouse who is a spendthrift. So actually we try not to use the word control lah, because our partner is another individual who have, like I mentioned, certain things in, dia punya, like I said, personal agenda. Macam maybe dia nak build dia punya collection sampai maybe 30 shoes and things like that. So one of the things that we can do is to understand why and what your spouse is spending on. Okay, try to see whether you feel it's something that you can the partner can still do that, but at the same time still make sure that their finances as a family tak affected. Okay, not saying that spendthrift is good. Of course, it's not. Anything excessive is not good. Everything have to be in moderation. So dia cakap spouse, so it doesn't really talk about whether it's a male or female. So I'll just give a brief answer lah. So for example, kalau if it's a male or female, irregardless of the gender, when they join into this partnership of marriage, right, they have to know that there are certain responsibilities they have to fulfill, especially financial responsibilities. So if there's any of their personal habits that can macam go against or can enable them to actually fulfill their responsibilities properly, then they have to really try to find out ways to stop atau reduce it. So maybe dulu boleh beli satu branded shoe every month. Sekarang mungkin like time birthday je ke, atau maybe once in like 3 months, you know, things like that. Yeah, as long as it doesn't compromise and the spouse is okay for them to continue their hobby, then it's okay, because it doesn't necessarily have to be shoes and things like that. Kadang-kadang our hobbies can be very expensive. So kalau ada orang hobi macam like maybe fishing or golfing, you know, kalau fishing, like, you know, you have to buy like different types of fishing rod, maybe the kail and things like that. So this kind of thing you have to, it's the same thing lah, communication. Communicate, talk to them, ask them why, and see if you can, if saya cakap they can do that responsibly, then okay, as long as they tak compromise the financial standing of the family.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Thank you Ustazah for your answer. Itulah, kita janganlah nak control our partner. Our partner ni bukanlah macam anak kita nak control dia punya spending. Macam hari-hari kasih $5 pergi sekolah. No lah, I think our partner pun ada dia punya wants, ada dia punya needs. Kita need to understand our partner together, insyaAllah. Okay, maybe I have one last question for Ustaz Maaz. Okay, so obviously communication, obviously lah, kira sometimes we can say yang miscommunication tu maybe is one of the reason for orang berpisah atau orang divorce kan. Okay, so maybe kita Ustaz can share why is this happening lah. Sometimes kita berapa lama kita can handle the miscommunication tu. Kadang kita dah ada misunderstanding, then kita overcome that. Terus is it that thing dah settle terus, atau takut nanti in future that thing yang boleh lead to our separation ke apalah.
Thank you. Soalan communication lagi miscommunication, whether in finances ataupun dalam any issues lah, in human relationship lah, tends to have this miscommunication, misunderstanding. The cliche way again, more communication lah. Lack of communication will leads to miscommunication. Memang betul, saya agree, miscommunication one of the factors leads to divorce in marriage. Tapi dalam masa yang sama juga, communication is not a apa orang kata end. It's just a means. Dia communicate how you feel, communicate what you think, kan? Communicate what you believe. But when you communicate good, when we communicate better, even though you have effective communication between husband and wife, tapi at the end of the day, kalau wife tu tak agree pun tak agree juga, the husband tak agree. So it comes back to your goal, your wawasan, your what do you see, what do you want from marriage, and then how well you manage your differences lah. Because I believe in marriage bukan similarities, macam Ustaz Safwan kata, bukan semuanya indah saja, bukan semuanya sama je yang attracts. So as the saying goes, opposite attracts. Opposite attracts, maknanya benda yang lain, kita tak nak suami isteri sama je kan, boring lah. Jadi benda yang lain, dia punya belief lain, culture dia lain, so what, dia punya perspektif lain. So how to find beauty in differences, tu yang challenges dalam rumah tangga. Itu yang Allah nak lah daripada kita, finding beauty in differences. While in finding those gems and beauties in differences, you need a lot of efforts, meaning you need to warding off your ego. Kan, itu susah tu jihad kita. Kita kena kembali pada hati kita juga, the spiritual heart. Sometimes orang ego because nak terlalu kedepankan pendapat dia. Dia believe yang whatever they think betul, whatever they think that is right, dia nak enforce dia punya idea tu towards dia punya pasangan, and make that as a family decision ataupun couple decision. Whereas in marriage, like Ustazah Jalidah said, is a partnership lah. Partnership, tak ada orang boleh control over, tak ada satu individu boleh control over other. So it is about when we communicate, even when we communicate well, tapi at the end of the day, kalau kita tak boleh gel dengan dia punya idea, tak boleh nak compatible, that happens jugalah, separation. Tapi that is something yang ramai orang ambil sambil lewa lah, ambil sambil lewa in terms of dia punya heart lah, dia punya hati. Jadi masalah hati juga, at the end of the day, the back masalah hati, and how you see, what do you want in family. You boleh tahan tak those differences. Kalau you tak boleh tolerate something orang kata tu, you tak nak mengalah to achieve something bigger, then that's it lah, boleh jadi perceraian dalam kehidupan. But at the end of the day, communication is just a means, it's not a end, it's a means. What you need to do is always to find ways to have effective communication between husband and wife. Find your own way. Okay, terima kasih.
Okay, terima kasih Ustaz atas jawapan ni, insyaAllah. Yeah, I think kita need to put more effort lah in our relationship with our partner. Itu just the main important part lah. Our partner pun, if dia tengok kita put in more effort every day kan. So insyaAllah dia bukan lembut hati juga, kita lembut hati, dia pun lembut hati, insyaAllah. InsyaAllah kita doa lah, insyaAllah kita dilembutkan hati-hati kita semua, insyaAllah. Okay, okay, for Ustaz Jalidah, for your ending remarks, insyaAllah, and your ending question lah, kita maybe can ask you, tak tahu question dia macam either or, tapi maybe answer dia lagi panjang kot. Between saving and spending,
would you rather?
Would you rather? Okay, between saving and spending, which is recommended more in Islam? So kalau kita fikir ni, either or lah, pasal kita ada duit, kita nak duit ni, kita nak save ke? Kalau dah save, tak ada duit untuk spend. Kalau dah spend, dah tak ada duit untuk save kan. So which is kita kena buat lah lagi better, insyaAllah. Fadal Ustaz.
Okay. Alright, so between saving and spending, okay. Actually, kalau boleh, I would like to add this other point, which is giving. So kalau boleh, when we are macam thinking about our budget or planning ini kan, saving, spending and giving. Yeah, and if you want to ask like which one is recommended in Islam, both are equally recommended, because if you the key is moderation. So kalau you overspend, tu dah jadi membazir. Kalau you oversave, dah jadi hoarding. And Islam is not recommended, and it's not encouraged to hoard your wealth. That is why we have channels macam zakat, the act of giving, because over saving is not good, because you're keeping your wealth to yourself. And kan, it's also very crucial for the economic punya situation as well, for you to spend. Because semua orang decided to just save, then macam mana ekonomi nak bergerak, of the economy of the country lah. Alright, so everything should be in moderation. Yeah, so that is where when you spend, make sure you don't overspend. Kalau save, if you're saving towards a certain goal, so for example, nak beli, nak beli motor or something. So your goal is to save 20,000. So if you were to save 20,000, it doesn't mean you oversave. It's because you are saving towards a goal. Okay, so oversave meaning that you are saving for no other purpose other than for your rainy season, then it's not good lah. Yeah, that is why alhamdulillah, we have the structure of zakat, whereby if your saving reach a certain limit, you will have to perform your obligation lah, to do zakat. Yeah, I hope it answers the question.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Yeah, insyaAllah lah. I think the most important part of the answer is moderation lah. Okay, so everything we need to be moderate lah. Kalau kita overspend, as Mary mentioned, kita dah just spend thrift lah kan. Oversave pun tak boleh. Kalau kita overspend pun takut nanti sampai kita nak kena pinjam duit untuk nak spend apa yang kita dah spend. Kita takut nanti apa orang Melayu kata, debt around our waistline lah kan. Hutang keliling pinggang. Okay, so kita tak nak lah seperti itu. Waistline dah besar, kita janganlah kita punya hutang pun besar juga. Okay, insyaAllah. Okay, alhamdulillah. We hope yang our viewers dekat Facebook Masjid Darul Makmur, you benefit more or less, insyaAllah. We are almost at our end of our session, insyaAllah, for today. Kita hope this maybe 1 hour plus kita have benefit something lah. Maybe for those yang dah married ke, yang belum married ke, kita hope yang kita semua lah, including myself, kita benefit from this session, insyaAllah. Okay, jazakumullah khairal jazak for our invited speaker, Ustaz Maaz, Ustazah Jalidah, insyaAllah. So before I end, I would like to urge our viewers lagi to give your feedback insyaAllah. Okay, you can scan the QR code yang dah shown on your screen, atau from the link yang kita dah provide dekat your comment section lah insyaAllah. Okay, as I mentioned, kita pun nak idea juga from all of you. What are the things yang kita nak share about for around our families, lah insyaAllah. Okay, so kita can benefit from the talk insyaAllah. Okay, I would like to thank again for our speakers for their time, for their contributions. Pagi-pagi kan kita dapat dengar these gems from them insyaAllah. InsyaAllah, we hope to see all of you again for the fourth session lah, I think insyaAllah in future. Do look up Facebook kita for our future programs insyaAllah. Before we end, Ustaz, kita end with recitation of tasbih kafarah and suratul Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'ashr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Have a great weekend. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Last yang bahas pula.